All right, welcome everyone. Happy Valentine's Day. Perfect class for today, cool season vegetables. Master Gardener Leslie will be presenting the class today. And as always, please type in all your questions via chat and we'll get them answered towards the end of the talk. I'm going to turn it over to Leslie. Welcome. The class is all yours.
Thank you. My name is Leslie Muennemann, and as you can see in this highlighted, that my email is embedded. So you are going to receive after this class a PDF of my slideshow. And in that slideshow, throughout, I've embedded hyperlinks to websites on the internet that you can click on and go to for more information. So there's a ton of information included with this presentation, a lot more than I could possibly talk about. But if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me via email, or we also have information on the Master Gardeners, how you can contact us and ask your questions. That's what we're here for. So I'm going to talk about cool season vegetables, growing those in the San Francisco Bay Area. First, I'm going to tell you about the Master Gardeners. So in the state of California, the University of California is sponsoring the Master Gardener program. And I believe there are Master Gardener programs through extension, university extensions throughout the country. But in the state of California, that's University of California is responsible. And we are a volunteer organization. And we get trained by professionals, professors and experts from the University of California. And I was trained in 2008. And before that, I became a master composter through the San Mateo County. But in order to become a master gardener, there has to be a program in your county. And at that time, there wasn't a program in San Mateo County. So if I encourage you, if you are interested in gardening, you like people and you like to educate, this is a place for you. It really, the training, which is going on right now, we have about 36 volunteers, trainees that are going through a multi-week, I think it's once a week they meet, and they have classes on insects, on growing, on everything that you can imagine. It's like a college course. So I encourage you. I think we do the training in our chapter is San Mateo County and San Francisco County. And then there's all the other counties have their individual programs. So depending on where you live, if you want to become a master gardener, go to their website and find out when the trainings are. Now, if you just have a gardening question, we have a lot of places that you can go. So I've listed here is the helpline, which is the volunteers are, they're sitting there at a desk answering the phone or answering emails and or receiving the public. So you can go 3 different ways. You can email, you can show up in person, or you can call. And these are the different places that we have a helpline and the dates and the times. So this slide will repeat itself at the end. And like I said, you're going to have a PDF that you can refer to. And all these highlighted, the link is embedded in their information if you want to go to the website. All right. So as I said, the Master Gardener program is a community service. So we are, in exchange for the training that we get through the University of California, we're required to do community service. And that's what I'm doing right now. I'm teaching the class. But we also teach parents, the school kids, and staff at the school how to set up a school garden. We do not do it for them. We teach them how to do it. And then they go on and train other people. And if you go to our website, I believe that if you click on this link here, it will take you to the website, to the page in our on our website that tells you about that. We also have demonstration gardens and research gardens. In the demonstration garden, basically we are just growing things, and then we at certain times we allow the public to come in, and we either we teach a class there and demonstrate something, or just take people on tours. And research gardens are where we do trials. So, you know, if somebody, one of the master gardeners wants to try different varieties of a vegetable or a flower, they can do, there's a protocol for setting up a trial. We also have a booth every year at the San Mateo County Fair. And we have an education center, which is basically, we call it the Gardening Education Center. And the San Mateo County has given us a patch of grass, of land, at the what used to be the San Mateo County Fairgrounds. And we've taken that and enclosed it, and they've pulled up all the Bermuda grass and repaired the soil. And now they have planter boxes, and we have 3 greenhouses on it. It's right across from the Jockey Club. So if you ever go to the San Mateo County Fairgrounds, I don't know what the hours are for the education center, but you know, it's open to the public when they're open. And community classes like this one. All right, so what am I going to talk about? Cool season vegetables. I'm going to describe some of them and kind of distinguish them from other season vegetables. And I'm also going to put a lot of emphasis on the difference between temperature and calendar date, because that's the whole point of my talk here, is that it's more important to know temperature than it is to go by the calendar as far as growing cool season vegetables. And the soil and ambient temperature is also important, because your ambient temperature and your soil temperature may be different, you know, and I'm going to explain how to do all this. Then it's really important that you know where you're going to grow things, that you know the course of the sun and the weather in that particular space. You know, how much sun do you have, how much shade. And starting seed indoors and transplanting, that'll be at the end. And if you already know how to do this, how to start seeds, or you aren't interested in that part of the presentation, I put it at the end so that you can leave. Go ahead, you won't hurt my feelings, but I put it in there for anybody who's new to gardening and they want to start things from seed. And it's just a little primer on that. It's pretty short. All right, so here are some pictures of cool season vegetables. As you can see, most of them are, they're called brassicas, and they're in the cabbage family, and there are a lot of them. And when you get your PDF, if you click on this image, it will take you to a website. Now, when doing the research for my presentation, I used a lot of different seed companies. We do not endorse any of these seed companies. We are completely neutral, but I had to use different, seed companies to gather information. So some of my links will go to a particular seed company, and it's strictly for informational purposes. It is not an endorsement. All right. So as I said, cabbages are big. The cabbage family, or brassicas, are big in the cool season vegetables. And here's a list of them. So their Asian vegetables are particularly numerous in that category, cool season. Napa cabbage and bok choy. Let's see, there's some other ones. I'm looking down the list here. There's one that looks like broccoli, but it isn't. So there are many Asian vegetables, but there are many of the regular vegetables that most of us know, like peas. We know snap peas, sugar peas, Swiss chard, cilantro, and then the root vegetables. All of these prefer to grow based on temperature. So, think about the temperature of your soil and your ambient temperature, and that's what you're going to focus on. And as we know, our climate has been crazy. So I have had my cool season vegetables in the ground, and I get a heat spike. when it's supposed to be cool, or I get a cold spell when it's colder than it's supposed to be, or the ground is too cold for anything to grow. And I'm going to explain all that. That's why I'm putting so much emphasis on temperature. All right, so here's a picture of me harvesting. Let's see, we have dinosaur kale. The dark green is the dinosaur kale, and the light green is the baby bok choy. And both of them are very easy to grow from seed. And I've done that for years. And I looks like I have some younger little seedlings planted in there. And I have 3 planter beds in my backyard. They're about 15 feet by 3 feet wide. And that's where we grow most of our vegetables. And this is my harvest from that when I was out in the garden. As you can see, I have my dinosaur kale, I have Swiss chard, and the baby bok choy. And all of these are delicious. You can eat them raw, you can eat them sauteed, steamed. They're very, like I say, they're very easy to grow, and they're very nutritious and very delicious. And here I put a link into the cabbage varieties. That will take you to one seed company page that has a lot of different cabbage varieties. And then if you click on this image, there's another link embedded in here that will take you to another page, so that you can see that there are many, many choices of vegetables that you can grow when the weather is cooler than the summertime. It's the same thing here. So Chinese cabbage is a Napa cabbage, usually. That's usually what is referred to. And I have not grown that. My personal guide for what I grow is, if it's expensive to buy and I can grow it easily, then that's my choice. So for instance, let's see, I'm trying to think of something that I wouldn't grow, like onions, for instance. I would not spend my time and effort growing onions because onions are relatively inexpensive. They're fun to grow, they're not hard to grow, but that's just my personal, I feel like I have limited real estate in my garden, so I focus on the vegetables that cost more money. And leafy greens, in my view, tend to be a little more expensive. So lately I've been growing radicchio, which is delicious. It looks like a lettuce, at least mine does. It's kind of red. And then the bok choy, and there's different varieties, many different varieties of bok choy. Cabbage, I haven't, Napa cabbage is pretty inexpensive, so I haven't grown that. But, you know, that's just my choice. And as you can see in this little graphic here, it tells you, it gives you a lot of information about what this particular plant needs. It needs to be above 41, but it doesn't tell you what the maximum is. And I'll tell you that most cool season vegetables do not want to be in an ambient temperature that's above 80 degrees Fahrenheit. And I'll explain later that the seedlings, if you transplant them into your garden, they're young seedlings, they do not like it to get below 50 either. So the cool season vegetables are a little more temperamental, a little more touchy than summer vegetables. So I also put a lot of emphasis on, because in our area, San Francisco Bay Area, because of the average temperatures that we have, they're not all the same. So the coast is a little different than San Francisco, and then the inland southern part of the peninsula of San Mateo County, where I am. So just for insurance purposes, I would favor a variety of seed that is either heat tolerant or bolt resistant. Either of those terms, they mean pretty much the same thing. That basically, if you have a heat spell, or if you plant it and it starts to get warm, that plant is engineered so that it will tolerate higher temperatures than other varieties of that particular seed. So when you go to buy seed, I recommend that you look for something that says heat tolerant or bolt resistant. And this is a whole point of my emphasis here, is that the temperature is more important than the date on your calendar. So I'm going to show you examples of how most of us, when we decide to grow something, when we go to do our research, we're told that to look at the calendar. Let's see if the next slide has that. Okay, here I'm telling you more about more vegetables. This is the baby bok choy, and I put links in here that have the different kinds of the bok choy, and these are all basically in the cabbage family. They're all brassicas. And if you click on these links, they'll take you to seed companies probably. That's probably what I embedded in there. Here's another example. This is a quick to maturity. So that's another important concept, is how long does it take from the minute you put that seed into the soil until you can actually harvest that plant and eat it. And quick to maturity, quick to harvest, days to maturity are other terms that you'll see. You want the shortest, and the seed packet will give you that information. Usually they'll tell you. The difficulty is, and I tried to resolve this in my research, is that different seed companies have different meanings for that. Some of them mean it's days from, they start counting days to maturity from the day that you put the seedling into, you transplant it into the outside. Others mean from the day that you plant the seed, whether indoors or outdoors. So, you know, depending on what seed company you buy your seeds from, read their instructions, research on, you know, read their information on their website. And if it's not clear, contact them. I've done that, and they are very responsive, but they have not agreed on a standard for what that means. And I believe I put a link in here somewhere in my presentation to a gal on the internet who talks about that very subject, how confusing it is to determine what the days to maturity are for a seed. But this, I put this one in. This is an example of a bok choy that is heat resistant, so that if you put it in the ground, say now, and we have a slight heat wave, it's not going to bolt as easily if it were a different variety that wasn't a hybrid engineered to resist heat. Okay, so here are more examples of cool season vegetables. Broccoli, obviously. These are all varieties that have heat tolerance. And I believe I put a link. Yes, I put a link in here. If you click on this image, it will take you to a website where these varieties are sold, and it'll give you more information. Now, in our Bay Area, we have the right now, which is the early spring, and then we have the fall and the winter. And those are the two extremes of the times of year when we have cooler season, cooler weather. But as I'll show you on a temperature chart, that is not, the date is not dependable for deciding when to put things in the ground. More cool season vegetables. If you click on this, I believe I put a link in here that takes you to a website that will discuss these different kinds. You know, the same plant, they just are presented in a different way. They may, each one may have different environmental conditions that they need, but they're not that different. Lettuce. All right. So I put this in to spinach is a cool season vegetable, and the little red asterisk is for the variety of spinach that is more tolerant to heat. Now, spinach is notorious, like lettuce, for being finicky about temperature. So if the days start to warm up, it may bolt. It may go to flower, go to seed. So if you get a variety that's engineered to tolerate higher temperatures, you'll probably have better luck. So that's why I highlighted these, and you have quite a few selections here. I haven't tried any of these. I have personally not had very good luck with spinach. I'll keep trying, but because I love spinach, and I would consider that relatively expensive, considering that a little bunch doesn't go very far. And we eat a lot of vegetables. So, it gets expensive when you buy enough to make a meal. I would grow this, but I haven't mastered it yet. So I will keep trying. Here's another list of examples of bolt resistant. You can click on each one of these. It will take you to a website, probably a seed company that explains. So different seed companies, some have their own varieties, some are varieties that all the seed companies have. So, as far as seed companies are concerned, just shop around, go to their website, explore. I like the websites where they educate the gardener and that they're friendly to home gardeners. Some seed companies are meant for people, farmers that grow on a big scale. We're growing on a small scale. So I'm leaning towards the ones that educate me, that give me dependable information, and that have a search function where I can limit. Say, for instance, I've gone to some of these seed companies and I type in the search Asian vegetables, and they have a whole category, or cool season vegetables, and they have a whole category, or heat tolerant or bolt resistant. So those are the kind of websites that I especially like. All right, so prevent bolting. I put a link in here to the University of California website that explains bolting. And bolting is a biological process where the plant gets the wrong message. And it could be caused by temperature, it could be caused by stress, it could be caused by the time of year. So, as I'll explain later, as the months go by, we have more sunshine as we go towards the summer, and then the sunshine decreases as we go into the winter. And the plant is very sensitive to that sunshine, the length of day or the length of night. And if you plant it at the wrong time of the year and it gets the wrong temperature or in the length of days, or you stress it by not watering it enough, or not giving it enough fertilizer, giving it too much fertilizer, too much water, the messages get confused and it will bolt. And bolting is basically where the plant stops growing and starts to reproduce by going to flower, and then it goes to seed. Now, the cool season vegetables, this was news to me, but apparently if you have a seedling, so this only affects the younger plants, the seedlings. If you put a seedling in your outdoors in your garden and the temperature decreases to 50 or lower, that is a stressor to that plant. And I had that experience where I put my seedlings, my cool season seedlings, in the ground, and it was above 50. It was probably in the 60s. And then we had a cold spell, and all of my bok choy they bolted. And it wasn't because the temperature got hot, it was because it got cool. And I looked at the temperature chart, the historical temperature chart, and that's what it was we had a cold spell. This is a aerial view of my house. I got lucky when I went onto Google Maps and I happened to find this picture. They must have taken it at 12 o'clock when the sun was shining overhead. And it shows you my planter boxes, the 3 planter boxes that I have in the yard. And I put in a little compass here so you could see that the morning sun comes up on the east, and then we get the afternoon sun over here. And most of the sunshine throughout the day in the summertime is in the backyard and along the back fence. That's my sunny part of the yard. The front yard there are a lot of trees over here, so it's partial shade, mostly shade. So this is where I grow my vegetables. And I'm going to show you how you can do this in your yard too. How you can figure out where to plant your garden. So all plants need sun. They need so many hours of sun. And I put in here pretty much what your plants are going to need. Now, the cool season vegetables, they need, if you're sprouting them, you're growing seedlings indoors with grow lights, then they're probably going to need about 16 hours of light, unless you have a really sunny south-facing window. If you put them in the garden, they're gonna need at least 8 hours of sun throughout the day. And cool season vegetables are tender, so they do not like hot summer sun or hot direct sun in the afternoon. So I'm going to show you ways that you can arrange your garden, or plant things so that you can create some cooler spots in your garden. Now in the summertime, your tomatoes and your peppers, they want heat. So you would definitely put those in the part of the garden where they get the summer or the afternoon sun. So this is an easy way for you to figure out where the sun hits your planting area. Is pick 3 times, do it in the morning, the afternoon, and late afternoon, and go out and see where the sun hits, and then draw a circle of where that is in your backyard. And that way, wherever they overlap, that's probably where you're getting the most sun throughout that 12 to 16 hour a day. And different times of the year, the sun is going to be in a different place. So in the summertime, pretty much on my property, it's straight overhead. And in the wintertime, it's much lower. So we have more shade in the backyard when the sun is lower. And, that's going to affect, there'll be more shade. So I wouldn't put my heat loving plants in the part that's going to be shady. I'd put those in the hottest part of the garden. So this is going to help you. And if you do this in the winter and do it in the summer, and you'll see that the sun hits your property in a different way each time of year. So what complicates things a little bit in the Bay Area is that we have microclimates. And our climate on our property is a little bit different than my neighbors, because we're a little lower than our neighbor, and we get a little more frost than they do. So your property, unless you're on very flat, level ground in your area, you may have a slightly different microclimate, and the vegetation around your property and the moisture in your property, the shade of trees, all that affects the temperature. So this is something that you can only learn by being observant. Walk around and think about it. Think about, where does the sun hit, and use thermometers and record this, and just learn about how your garden works. This looks like they put the Master Gardeners put this chart together to talk about tomatoes. So they put in days to maturity. So we have in our program, they've organized our planting calendar by 3 areas. Hot is the southernmost part in the inland part of San Mateo County. That's where I live. The sunny part is further north. Let's see, it tells you what cities here. Yeah, the north of San Mateo. Let's see, Redwood City is considered hot, and then San Mateo would be sunny. So the little cooler than the southernmost part. And then the foggy is San Francisco and the coastal areas. So I put this in here strictly so that you could read it and gather more information if you want to learn about your particular part of the county. Now, as I alluded to, the plants are very sensitive to sunshine. And as the months go by and we go further into the summer, our days get longer, so there's more sunshine, and our nights get shorter. And then as we go into the winter, the opposite happens. Our days get shorter and our nights get longer. Now, when plants are grown in a greenhouse, they can manipulate all these conditions and get plants that would ordinarily bloom in the winter. They could get them to bloom in the summer just by tricking them with temperature and with light. I've done that with a Christmas cactus and it works. So, but it's a complicated subject that, you know, but I put this link in here so that you can see that as right now we're in February, and as the days move towards the summertime, we're going to have more and more sunshine. That also means that the temperature is going to increase. But as I mentioned earlier, it's not definitive. I wouldn't trust most of those calendars that tell you that you can plant in February, you can plant in June, because the temperature, the conditions may not be there for that plant. That plant may just sit there and do nothing if the temperature's not right. So, but as far as sunshine is concerned, this is information that is helpful. You know, if you know that your plant needs sunshine, like planting your summer garden, this is when you would start your seeds so that you can put them in the ground, because they need the most hours of sunshine, and that's in the summertime. All right, so many planting guides will tell you to check your first and last frost date. So I put this slide in to show you that what they say. They'll tell me that January 3rd is the last frost in San Mateo County. Now I'm going to go back and show you that in January, temperatures are still, well, this isn't a temperature, this is an hour chart. Let's see this one. So in February or January, the temperatures are, they're not at frost level. Frost level would be 32 degrees. But my experience, at least in my garden, have been that when I do not expect a frost date, I may have a few hours in the middle of the night where the temperature dips. And you know, I come out in the morning and find that the dog's dish, the water dish, has a little bit of ice on it. So, you know, it's unpredictable. And that's why I'm not going by frost dates anymore. I'm looking at temperature charts when I decide to plant. And in San Mateo County, these are the average low and high temperatures for the calendar for the month, months of the year. And as I'm going to explain later, seeds need a certain temperature to germinate. Okay. And, you know, if we can't get soil in our garden outside, if it is not at that temperature, those seeds will not germinate. That's why a lot of growing guides tell you to start your seeds indoors, because indoors you can manipulate with lights and with heat mats. You can create the conditions that where the seeds will germinate on time and efficiently. And then once they're at the right size, then you can transplant that seedling out into the garden when conditions are right. So like a lot of warm season vegetables that you usually grow in the hot months, in the summertime, they need it to be quite warm in the yard. And as you can see in San Mateo County, it doesn't get terribly hot. They probably have heat spikes every now and then, but it's not terribly warm, and it doesn't get terribly cold either. So it's very moderate. So here again is another, just a historical look at temperatures by month in different cities in San Mateo County. And as you can see, things don't get really cold, nor do they get really hot. But if you need temperatures of 80 degrees to get your seeds to sprout, and you put it into the soil that is at 56, it's not gonna germinate. It may germinate, someday when it gets warm enough, but usually what happens is that seed sits there, and if it gets wet, if you're irrigating your garden, that seed's just going to rot and die. So this is why, again, I emphasize pay attention to the temperature of your soil and the ambient temperature instead of the time of year. So here we go. This is the crux of what I'm trying to say, is that the temperature that the seeds need to germinate is about 85 degrees. Now, where does it start at 85 degrees here in our San Francisco Bay Area? Nowhere. There may be a day when it rises to that temperature, but most of the days, the months of the year, the temperatures are a lot less than 80 degrees. That's why a lot of guides recommend that you start your seeds indoors, and you start them by using either a very strong south-facing window or grow lights, and that you put a heating mat underneath that has a thermostat on it where you can control the temperature. And all of these beets, carrots, lettuce, parsley, radish, spinach, turnips, cabbage, Swiss chard, all these are cool season vegetables, but they all need pretty high temperatures to germinate. And you're not going to find that temperature this time of year in your yard. So as you can see, the black dot is optimal. You can put them in the ground at a low temperature, but I have another chart that's going to show you that if it's not at the optimal temperature, it's going to take a lot longer for that seed to germinate. So the best information you can get is by reading your seed packet and in knowing what zone you are in. So there are, for gardeners, there are two zones. There's the USDA, which is United States Department of Agriculture. They've created for all the states in the union a system by, and this is it on the right here, of zones for growing things by temperature. And these are the different zones, USDA zones in California. And we are mostly 9A, 9B, 10A, 10B. There might be 11 in here somewhere, but this is mostly, we get as high as 80 degrees and as low as 20, which is below freezing. And some areas do get a little bit of frost. We don't get snow, but we do get a little bit of frost in the Bay Area. So your best bet is, if you're contemplating growing something, is read the seed packet carefully and make sure that you understand. Here it's telling you the time of year. And I say, okay, use that information, but double check by looking at a weather chart, an historical weather chart, what in your city is the temperature usually. And it's usually not going to be warm enough, or it's going to be too warm to put that seed in the ground. All right, so I mentioned days to maturity or harvest date. That is how long it takes for that seed to grow into a mature plant where you can harvest it. And different seed companies, they do not have a standard definition. So, and I looked. So this link will take you to an article by a gal on the internet, a gardener, who explains that inconsistency and how she handles it. So, but many of the packets will tell you whether they're a cool season or a warm season vegetable, and they'll tell you when to grow it. So you can grow things if their dates to maturity are short, like this one. Let's see, does it tell you? Yeah. So if you put this in, you start the seed, you will have a plant that you can harvest to consume within 35 days. So this would be a good choice as the days get longer. As the days get shorter and you have more time in the fall and the winter, you can grow things that take longer, like cabbage. They take a lot longer to grow into a full-size mature plant. Leafy greens are quick. So that's what I would do this time of year. I'd focus on the quick to harvest varieties. So if you click on this link, I'm pretty sure I put more information into this graphic that will help you just help you decide what plants to pick. So here's another chart that Master Gardeners put together. It looks like they were people from Half Moon Bay, because I highlighted that. But it has a lot of useful information. So it tells you what zone by city, USDA zone. Sunset has also come up with a system for deciding growing conditions. Sunset is a little different than the USDA. They're a little more granular. They go more by microclimate. So I think their cities or their areas, their little zones are much smaller than the USDA. Both of those help you. You know, you go to your city, you find out what your sunset zone is, you find out USDA zone is, and you learn what your temperatures are throughout the year. All that information is very important to know if you're going to grow anything. So again, here they tell you, let's go back. They tell you what your first frost date and your last frost date. Now, as I said, I don't depend on those dates, because if I were just going by that date and I put seed into the soil in my backyard, that soil is nowhere near warm enough to germinate that seed. It's just going to sit there. So consequently, if I want to start germinating seed ahead of time, ahead of, as the soil warms up outside, I would have to start it indoors so that I had transplants ready to put into the garden. So let's see, this gives you a few more these look like the average temperatures for that area. I just put that in there for you to look at, and you can gain more information about where you live. So this is a typical planting calendar. This was put together by somebody in our program, and we have hot, sunny, and foggy, as I mentioned earlier. The hot is where I live, in the southernmost part of San Mateo County. And then the mid part is called sunny, and is not as hot as down here. And then the foggy conditions would be San Francisco and the coastal areas. So if you click on this link, it will take you to the website where you can pick whatever city or area that you live in, so you have information. But what these calendars show you is it tells you when you can start growing, when you can plant seed directly into the soil outside, or when you need to put a transplant in. So you put transplant in as the season gets colder or hotter, depending on what you're trying to grow. So right now in February, it tells you that, let's see, a transplant. So celery, it tells you that celery, you will have to either buy the celery plant as a transplant from the nursery, or you should have started it earlier in the year and have a transplant ready to go into the ground. You wouldn't plant it from seed for various reasons. The days are getting warmer. The celery may not mature in time for, before it gets too warm, so it would bolt. So pay attention to this information. It's strictly a guideline. It tells you roughly whether you need to start seed indoor if you're doing it yourself, or whether you need to go to the nursery to buy a transplant. So that's basically something that's been grown ahead of time and is ready for you to put into your soil. Now, I've done that. I've followed this calendar, and a lot of us did. And we learned, for instance, we buy our tomatoes when we have our sale in April. And then we come home and we take those beautiful little seedlings and we put them into our planter boxes at home. Now, it was not warm enough for that tomato plant to grow. So it just sat there. And that's what's going to happen if the conditions outside are not optimal for your plant to grow. It's not going to grow. So if it's too hot, the cool season vegetable will bolt. If it's too cold, the warm season vegetable won't grow. It'll just sit there. It may survive and just sit there until it gets warmer and then start to grow, or it may rot depending on the conditions. So that's why it's important to pay attention to your soil temperature and your ambient temperature. All right, this slide has links. Depending if you already know where you live and what calendar you want, you can pick those directly. So I put this slide in because it explains to you, depending on your soil temperature, or if you don't have a heating mat, say you're starting seed indoors and you don't have a heating mat and it's kind of cool inside and your soil isn't getting warmed up, your seed is going to take, if it needs 80 degrees to germinate, it's not going to germinate for a long time. So this chart pretty much tells you how many days it's going to take for that seed to germinate at different temperatures. If you have the optimal temperature, then it's going to be quick. 2 days for escarole or endive, lettuce will germinate. Lettuce seed will germinate in 2 days, roughly, if you have a heating mat underneath it, underneath the seed. And then once the seed is germinated, you remove the heating mat, you keep the lights on it, and I'll explain that later when we talk about growing seeds. And here's information for each plant that tells you what the conditions, optimal conditions are for transplanting that seedling into the soil. So if it's not warm enough out in the garden, you would keep that seedling indoors. You don't need the heating mat anymore once it's germinated, but it does need light. So if you don't have bright enough light from your window, then you have to use grow lights. So this chart gives you a lot of information depending on what you want to do in your garden. So this is where you find out about your soil temperature. I was using a compost thermometer, which I have several. The soil thermometer is pretty much the same thing, except the stem is shorter. And I put it in various places in my yard to figure out what just roughly average the soil temperature is, just to inform myself. And I know that right now the soil is very wet and it's very cool. So pretty much I have plants in there, but they're not really growing because it's not warm enough. They're going to sit there, and if I put seed in right now, it would probably just sit there. It's just not warm enough. So I'm starting seed indoors. But as far as the thermometer is concerned, you could use a kitchen thermometer. I've done that. You know, as long as it goes down to 60, just take it out there and check. Using your hand isn't, it'll give you some information, but you really do need to know, is that soil warm enough for my plant to grow? And every plant has different needs. So the cool season vegetables, they want it to be about 80 degrees to germinate. And then when you put them out in the garden, they need it to be about 60. So that's roughly 60 to 80 is when your soil and the ambient temperature, and ambient temperature and soil temperature are not the same. So you could be having, it could feel pretty warm, but usually the soil is a lot cooler, depending on if the soil's dry, it may be warmer than if it's wet. So that's why you need to go out there and check it, test it, take a thermometer and figure out when your soil temperature is warm enough to receive transplants. So I called the nurseries and asked them, when do they sell their cool season transplants? And they don't start until September. So they've started seed in greenhouses probably in June, because it takes about 6 to 8 weeks for those seeds to grow into transplants that are big enough to go into your garden. So if you're shopping for transplant cool season vegetables, they don't show up on the shelves until September, and then they're available through January. But, you know, pay attention to the variety that you pick. If you pick a cool season vegetable in January, make sure that that variety is going to have enough, that it's the days to maturity match the time that you have left before the weather gets hot in our area, because as the months progress, it's going to get hotter and hotter and hotter. And the only way you know that is by either keeping records of the temperature on your property or by looking at those temperature charts by month, and hoping and praying that that cabbage, which is going to take however many days, it's going to be a long days to harvest for a big cabbage to mature, or broccoli or cauliflower. They take longer to mature to the point where you harvest them. Baby spinach and bok choy and leafy greens generally don't take very long. So when you buy a transplant at the nursery, pay attention to the variety and the days to harvest, and make sure that the temperature, the conditions are right in your garden. All right. So I mentioned there are ways that you can manipulate your garden, the way you plant things, or the way where you put things in your garden to create shady conditions or sunny conditions. So in this case, we want to create, say you have, you're planting your lettuce, and you don't want it to get hit by the late afternoon sun. So you could plant a vertical structure between the lettuce and the sunny side of the garden and grow vines up that. That would create some shade. Or you could put a teepee like they did over here on the right. Anything. I've taken a cardboard box and put that in front of the plant that was getting too much sun. It doesn't matter. All you're trying to do is to minimize how much sun or heat that plant is getting. And you can use shade cloth. I've used old sheets, and the vice versa. If you need sun, then you make sure that you put the vegetables that need sun, like the beans or the peppers, those go on the sunny side of the garden. And then the ones that want, well, less sun, you'd put on the opposite side. So you could use the beans and the tomatoes and the peppers as a shade for your lettuces on the other side. Okay, this is a seed company in San Diego, and this is a video. I'll let you watch it at home, where she talks about cool season and warm season and what she's doing in her garden. So I put it in there because it pretty much repeats what I've been saying to you about, although they go by calendar. So they don't talk, she does mention temperatures, but the focus is more on their calendar because they're trying to sell you a calendar. But I thought it was informational. I watched it and I thought it was pretty good. So at this point, I'm going to switch and start talking about how to grow seeds indoors or outdoors. And if you are an experienced gardener and you already know this, you're welcome to leave. If you're not interested, you can leave or stick around, and I put a short primer here on what I'm doing and things you need to know if you're going to start growing your vegetables from seed. So I'm going to talk about growing indoors, and the reason we start seed indoors are because seeds need a certain temperature to germinate, and the conditions outside are not optimal for seed germination. Sometimes they are. In the hot weather, you can, and some plants prefer to be direct sown into the ground. They do not like to be transplanted. And your packet will tell you that, but you have to make a decision. I have taken plants that supposedly do not like to be transplanted and started them indoors because I know they're not going to germinate. The soil is not at the right temperature. And I very carefully transplant them. The roots don't like to be disturbed. And there are people that grow transplants that do not like to be transplanted. They grow them in those little compostable pots, or you can use toilet paper rolls, you know, to grow pea seeds or bean seeds in. And that way, once you transplant that little tube into the ground, that cardboard will decompose and it won't disturb the roots. But so these are the kind of things I'm going to talk about: growing indoors, starting seed outdoors, and transplanting. All right, so if you're like me, you have a lot of seed and it's been sitting around and it's gotten old. Now, probably the best advice that I've learned along the way that I did my research is that it's worth it to buy fresh seed every time you're going to grow something. They're not that expensive. And that way you are going to be guaranteed that most of the seeds in that packet are going to germinate. I have a lot of old lettuce seed and they do not germinate. The lettuce tends to get old very quickly. Some seeds will germinate even though several years have passed. And if you are in doubt, the way to find out is to try this. And I've been doing this lately because, like I said, I have a lot of old seed. I just take a paper towel and I put it on a shallow container. I get it wet and I sprinkle the seed on top. Now I just leave it that way, or you could watch this video or click on this link and it'll show you. People have different ways of doing it. Some people take the paper towel, the moist paper towel with the seed, and they fold it up and put it in a little plastic bag and seal it, and that keeps the moisture. And then you just wait. I have to come around and look at it and keep squirting water on the seed to keep that paper towel moist because it's exposed. And that way, if you do 10 seed, for instance, and only 3 germinate, then that's going to tell you your percentage of what you're going to get. Most of the seed in that packet are not going to germinate. But this is just for your information. It's an interesting way to figure out what you have. So this is my setup at home. Now I get these aluminum pans. They're very inexpensive. I buy them at Costco in a great big packet, and I use 2 per seed. And the first one, the one that's on the inside, has holes in it. So I just take the stick and poke holes in it, and that contains the soil and the seed. And the second container is where I put the water. And so I put the first one in the second one, and that way the water gets wicked up into the soil, and I don't have to water from the top. And the reason for that, there's a couple reasons. It's better to not get your plants wet. You have less risk of disease. And furthermore, it's a little insurance for me. If I forget to water my seedlings one day, at least there's water in the bottom and that soil is kept moist. I don't want it to be drowning, but I do want that soil to remain moist. Once soil dries out, the seedlings will suffer. They'll either get stressed or they'll die. And I've had that happen too. So you can set it up any way you want. This is just my method, and I've been doing this for years. I plant enough seed so that if I make a mistake or they're old seed, I usually get enough to make my time worthwhile. And then I transplant these little seedlings when they're big enough. I move them into the outside. So as you can see, this was a greenhouse that had a plastic cover on it, and I kept a frame. And then I got these grow lights. Now, I put links in here for grow lights. That is a big subject, and it's complicated. When you go online, there is so much information. I hope that the links that I put in will lead you to the right choice, because the grow lights, the plants need a certain amount of light, and they need certain kinds of light. And it'll be explained on the internet, on the websites that I sent you to. These grow lights, somebody recommended these, and I bought them. It turns out that they're very, very weak. My seedlings tend to get straggly, and that means that there's not enough sunshine. There's not enough light for them to grow. They don't have the light needs that met. So I have to lower that the grow light has to be really close to the seedlings to give them enough. And even though this is a south facing window, we have a lot of trees out there and it's pretty shady. So I had to use grow lights. Otherwise, I'd have very spindly, leggy seedlings. Here's what other people do. They take those, the little stick pack tray or anything that you have on hand. It doesn't matter. Somebody used a tray, looks like they used a drawer. Whatever you have, you just want a container that drains, that you can either put on a windowsill and or put grow lights above it. And each of these links takes you to a website that describes, gives you more information about that particular subject. This is a video that describes hardening off. Now, hardening off is a process of acclimatizing your seedlings, which you've grown indoors, and taking them outside. Now, the temperature differences can be dramatic. In our area, they aren't that dramatic. So we don't leave the heater on all day. So our house inside is pretty much as cool or cooler than the outside. So I have not practiced this in my garden. I've done it a few times, but it's kind of a pain. So I don't really do it. When my seedlings are big enough in the house, I take them outside and I put them directly into the garden. But this is, listen to this video. She explains what it's all about. You're basically conditioning your seedling so that it doesn't suffer a shock when you take it outside. So you're just giving it outside sunshine and outside temperature in small doses. Here's some other ways. Basically what they're doing here is they're preserving the moisture in the soil. Now the seeds, in order to germinate, they need heat. Most of them need light, but they really need moisture. And if they dry out, they will die because they're very tiny. So they've just, somebody's, they're recycling what they have, and you can do this. You can use plastic bags. You put a little, like a tomato cage around a plant and cover it with plastic. That would keep the moisture in the soil. There are many ways to do this. And these are just some ideas. Okay, if you're going to start seed, you do not want to use your garden soil to start seed. I've done that, and I've had good results, but I've also had problems because the native soil has pathogens in it, which can attack the seedlings and either stop them from growing at all, or you'll get some sort of a mold or fungus in there that kills them. So we recommend that you use either commercial seed starting soil or that you make your own. And here I put in how to start your own. I do this at home. You can use, first of all, you need some sort of medium that is going to absorb water and retain water. And most seed starting, commercial seed starting products have peat moss in it, but peat moss is not a sustainable product. Our planet is running out of it. So the alternative is use coconut coir. And if you go online, there are others that I'm learning about, but I have experience using coconut coir. And basically it comes, it's dehydrated coconut husk, and you put it in a bucket of water, and it absorbs all that water, and then you have to break it down into a powdery mix, and it's hydrated by then, and then you mix it with perlite or vermiculite, which are minerals that retain water and help drainage. So those seem contradictory, but they are consistent and they are important. You need the soil medium to be moist, but you need it to drain. You don't want your seeds sitting in water, and you don't want your medium to be soggy. You want it to have moisture, but drain well. And either vermiculite or perlite will do the trick. Now, coconut coir, I've lately, in doing the research, I learned that some people have different opinions about coconut coir. Some say that it has salt in it. Others say that they don't like the labor that's involved in acquiring coconut coir. Others say that it requires a lot of water, that they have to rinse it and rinse it and rinse it to remove the salt. So it's very wasteful water. And, I'll let you decide. Um, Basically, it's very inexpensive. And this is what we use at home. And we also have compost that we put in. And my goal is to keep those seedlings damp, plenty of moisture, and plenty of light and heat. So here is another video that this guy is going to explain to you how he makes his seed potting mix. Now, the commercial seed potting mixes, if you decide to buy that, look at the ingredients. Some of them have fertilizer in there. Some of them have other products in there. I have not tried those, so I can't personally attest to it. I was trained to believe that seeds, you do not put fertilizer into starting seeds. I'm learning differently now. Different people have different opinions about that. Basically, the seed has everything it needs to germinate. But if the seed sits in a container and for a very long time, eventually that seed potting mix is going to run out of nutrition. And I have seen some of my seedlings suffer because of that. And I've had to add very, very weak fertilizer into the when I water them. I water them with a very weak solution of fertilizer to add a little more nutrition. Because remember, as you water, you're leaching the soil. So a lot of that nutrition gets washed away. But anyway, he explains a lot of this in his video, and I recommend that you watch it. So here again is my garden. I took this picture. It had been raining a lot. And as you could see, the soil is highly saturated, but there are no puddles. So what that told me was that the soil was draining. And the plants, pretty much the temperature is cool. So those plants are just sitting there. They'd been there for quite a while. They are not growing, but they are not stressed out. And, as the days went by and the temperatures rose, those plants did finally start to grow. So in your planter box or wherever you're going to grow your plants outside, you need to make sure that your soil is well draining. And most of the soil around the Bay Area, in most places, it's really high in clay. And what happens is that the clay particles are very, very fine and they stick together. And so that's why you see a mud puddle where the water is not going anywhere. It's probably mostly mud, mostly clay. And so the water just sits there. Eventually it will filter down, but you want soil where the water soaks into the soil at a good pace. And I have in here links that will take you to websites where you could learn about your soil, whether it's draining or not, and if it's not, what you need to do. The remedy for clay soil is compost, is organic material. Organic material is any plant that's been decomposed, and leaves. If you rake up leaves and let them just break down, that's leaf mold, that's compost. Or you could start a compost bin. I think I put a link in here on how to start, how to make compost. And you want the soil to not dry out. You want it to retain some water, but you don't want it to be soggy. So you want it to be like a damp sponge. So if you fill your sponge with water and then you squeeze it and get most of the water out so that it's not dripping, that is how much water you want your soil to keep. You want to keep a steady level of moisture in your soil. This is a picture of clay. So this soil is probably mostly clay. It probably has very little organic material in it. And that is why the water sits there. It will evaporate and it will soak into the ground, but it will do it very slowly. So if you have soil that looks like this, or that's rock hard when it's dry, then you probably have clay soil and it needs to be amended with organic material, which is compost. Okay, so in this link, I believe I put in a video of the San Diego Seed Company where they talk about having soil that's, never been amended. So they're starting out from scratch, and it'll explain to you if you're in that situation, say you're a new gardener and you want to start gardening, it'll explain to you how you need to ready your garden soil to receive plants, how to add fertility to it. So fertilizer is, the government requires them to put exactly what percentage of nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus are in the bag. Now, when you buy an amendment like compost or like blood meal or like bone meal or any of the other organic, those are not fertilizer, those are amendments. So they will not have this information. This is strictly for these particular ingredients. When the manufacturer is claiming to sell you fertilizer, that package needs to have these numbers on them. And these numbers are strictly the percentage of that particular mineral in the package. All right. So watering, here we go. Okay, so now we're going to talk about watering your plants outside. Say you've hardened off your transplants that you've grown indoors and you move them into your backyard, into your garden, or wherever you're going to grow them. You could grow them in the ground, you grow them in pots. Now you need to keep the soil moist. You don't want to stress your plant. So you can use soaker hoses. I've used those, they're very good. We have drip now and we have it on a timer. And you want to make sure that you try very hard to not water overhead and get your leaves wet. The problem is that encourages mildew and all sorts of problems. So try to focus on getting just the soil wet. And one way to keep moisture in the ground, I gave you the example of plastic. You can put a plastic container around it. You can also use mulch. And mulch is basically like putting a blanket over your soil. And you can use leaves, you can use grass clippings, you can buy wood chips, you can use compost, you can use more soil. Basically, you're putting a layer over wherever your plant is planted, and you're trying to keep the moisture in the soil around the roots. You don't want that mulch touching the base of the plant. So just gently push it away. The reason is because the mulch is going to get wet and you don't want that moisture to damage the plant. So I've used grass clippings. I've taken up the yard waste and clipped it up and put that back on the soil to cover it up. It doesn't look very pretty, but I'm using everything that I have in the yard, and it rots, and eventually it just becomes part of the garden. So, and it helps keep moisture. It really makes a huge difference in keeping your soil moist. As far as pests are concerned, this is what I have the most problems with, are snails and slugs. And this is probably what you're going to have, unless you have a rabbit. We believe that we've had a rabbit in our backyard and they will consume a lot. For that, we have to put cages over everything, the same with squirrels. But for snails and slugs, there are products out there. Sluggo is a non-toxic to pets. And I've used that. It's a granular, and you just sprinkle it on the soil, and that controls snails. Probably your best bet is to go out at night with a flashlight, and because they're nocturnal, and pick them off. But I put a link in here that will take you to a website that explains how to deal with snails and slugs. Other pests that you might get for these particular plants are there's a little white butterfly that lays its eggs on the leaves, and they turn into little caterpillars, which will eat holes into your leaves. I've had this, and there are pesticides out there, but I found out that there was a biological control, which is basically a bacteria. And I opted for that, and it worked very well. It's basically, it's a product that you dilute and then you spray it on both sides of the leaf. It's non-toxic to humans. And if the little caterpillar eats into the leaf that contains the spray on it, it kills it. So that was a good solution. The other solution is to just go around and turn all your leaves and look underneath. This caterpillar is green like the leaf, and it's very tiny, so they're very hard to see. But you could also pick them off or just squish them. And I have not had a lot of pests. So, but I did put links in here that will take you to a website that will, if you have a pest, it'll probably help you figure out what it is and what to do about it. Now, in my research, I found out that when you're picking seeds, that you're going to have better luck with seed that is grown in your area. So I went through and I found, and these aren't all of them, I think I missed a few, but I picked, I think this link up here will take you to a longer list. But these are different seed companies, and we as master gardeners are not endorsing any particular company. But that supposedly grow their plants and gather their seed in our neck of the woods. So, you know, if it's true that that seed will perform better in our area, you know, I haven't done the research, and I don't know if that's true or not, but I put them in there for whatever it's worth. As you can see, there are a lot of seed companies out there, and this is just a small list. Now, these are heat companies that I went through and made sure that they're offering heat tolerant or bolt resistant, which is what I recommend that anybody who wants to grow cool season vegetables on the San Francisco Bay Area pick. I'm going to start practicing this too. I'm going to look at the seed packet and make sure that it's been engineered to resist if I have a heat spike, which I fully, with the climate change, I fully expect our temperatures to be all over the place. So this is just a little bit of extra insurance. And these are the references that I used to put together this presentation. There's links embedded in all of these, a lot of information. And, you know, I hope that all your questions will be asked, but if you still have questions, please don't hesitate to email me or to contact the San Francisco, San Mateo County Master Gardeners. Here's a page again with links for how to contact us. We are a free service. We're associated with the University of California. And, you know, we enjoy what we do, and we love interacting with the public. So please don't hesitate to contact us if you have any questions. And I believe that Linkso is going to email you this PowerPoint presentation, just what you saw, and she's recording it. So you can come back at a later date and go to the Linkso website and listen to it all over again. And I hope that it's been helpful to you and that you've enjoyed it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Leslie. I don't have any questions so far via chat. So if anyone has any questions now, go ahead and send them via chat. If not, we could end a bit early. I guess no questions. You must have covered it all, but it was a great talk, and this is available or will be available on Linkso's community resources page since it's being recorded. So, and I'll go ahead and email the PowerPoint as well. Excuse me, the PDF that'll go out. So I think no questions. Oh, hold on. We've got one. Oh, this is an IPM question. I'm not sure if you want to take this one, Leslie, but it's regarding aphids.
Yeah, aphids. Aphids, my experience with aphids, what I was trained was to not, to just leave them alone and hope that the ladybugs will show up in your garden. And that happened to me. I didn't even know the aphids were there. They were quite thick on one of my, I don't know if it was a vegetable or flower, but the ladybugs did appear. And that's what happens in a garden where you don't use a lot of chemicals. So if you just let nature do its job, it will do it. And the ladybugs showed up and they took care of the aphids. You can, contrary to what I just said about not getting your plant wet, you can take a hose and you can spray all those aphids off of your plant. But if you absolutely, if it's all throughout your garden, you've got it's out of hand. You can go to our, I think one of those links will take you to pest. And I don't remember if aphids, it depends. I mean, aphids they're like snails, they're everywhere, right? So you can either use your hose and spray them off or just put up with it. It's, unless it's out of hand, it's probably not going to be, it's like mildew, it doesn't look very pretty, but nature usually takes care of the problem. So that's what I would say about aphids.
All right, well, that was the only question. So thank you. I'm not sure what they're asking. I did an asparagus on the chart with when veggies should go in the ground. Not sure what that means.
Yeah, I don't think I saw asparagus. If you go to our website or just Google asparagus, grow asparagus, and you're going to find a website. And if it's a seed company, they're going to explain to you what you need to do. But I have not grown asparagus.
All right.
Call our helpline. I'm sure, those master gardeners, they're sitting in an office with a lot of books and they can look it up.
Okay. All righty. Well, that's it.
Thank you, everybody.
All righty. Thank you, Leslie. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Leslie and Con.